Good morning, brothers. I'm here at the gaming table, the empty gaming table. This is my tablet. And Nurgle Rider 781, 3 weeks ago, wrote in my comment section, he said, something I'd love to see a video from you about. How do you do your table setups? I find it interesting how much detritus you have on your table, all the rocks, etc. At first, I assumed you just set the table up and left it that way, but it seems you change for each video, which seems like it would be a lot of work, so I am curious about your process, etc. And quite honestly, I could say 1,000 words about that. So I'm going to. So what's happening is, Farsi and I are building up to a large game. I've been painting Yvraine for almost a month now, and she's a challenge. But we're looking to meet on Wednesday and start that game we want to play. It's going to be roughly 4,000 points aside. And so I got to set up the table for that. So the first thing I want to say about tables is battle mats are a great investment. Like if you're just a new player, right? The only way to have an awesome collection of terrain is to either spend tons of money or slowly accumulate it over time, which is what I've done. But one of the first purchases, if I were you, I would make is one of these neoprene battle mats. I have two. This green one's my first one, and then this is double-sided. We have concrete, snow, and then green. And the reason I recommend this is it's a nice, soft surface. And so, we drop our very expensive models, and you don't want to drop them on, on the hard wood. And so it's nice to have the soft surface for the battle mat. When I bought these, they were about $100 each. I don't know what they go for now. With a Google search, you type in Warhammer 40,000 battle mat. Tons of companies make them. But I'd really do recommend a battle mat as like a first purchase. So the different battle mats lead to different themes. I also have these orange foldable game tiles. These are Games Workshop products. And on one hand, I really like them because they're very different. I love this orange. My vote against it, though, is they wear easily, and because they're made out of card. And then my other vote against it is Games Workshop products are always really expensive. And these were a gift from our executive producer. And I do really like them, but I don't recommend them as much as I recommend something like this. These are rocks that I've just picked up from outside. I have this whole milk crate full of table rocks down here that I use frequently. The great thing about rocks is they're abundant and they're dirt cheap. So these are just rocks that I found outside, and for the price of free, you can make a really interesting table with just rocks. And this is about half of my rocks, and these are just super basic rocks. Now these are basic rocks, but here I got fancy rocks. And I found these at a secondhand store, and they were, a couple dollars each, but they really add some color to the table, and they're dirt cheap. I also found this tree at the secondhand store, and it was just a couple bucks. It's ceramic, but I like it a lot. It's a nice tree, and it was really cheap. We're over at the shelves now. Up here is where I keep the winter terrain. These snowy trees in the back, you can find those at your local hobby store around Christmas time for about $10 a package. $10 for like 30 trees. This giant tree here, it was a couple bucks. This little white tree I found at like a dollar store for a couple of bucks. These plastic rocks came with the HeroScape stuff. Anyway, buying Games Workshop terrain is outrageous because it's really expensive when there are so many less expensive options. I also want to point up here, these houses are all papercraft. And I don't really use the papercraft stuff much anymore because now that I'm on like YouTube, I'm all like serious. But if you're on a budget and you want an awesome table, get into your Google search. Google, tabletop games, papercraft terrain. You'd be amazed at how much comes up. You can make an awesome table out of paper. And it's also papercraft by itself is a really fun hobby. It's soothing. You sit with an X-Acto knife, you cut everything out, you glue it down, you get a marker in you color the corners if you're cool. This thing here, this piece doesn't make it to table much because it's clearly made out of paper and it's kind of hit. But this comes from a website, and forgive me if I get it wrong, I swear it's called Journey. And there's a whole city of this stuff, and you could buy it all, or not buy it all, but you download it all because it's free, and then get it printed up. You get it printed up matte on heavy card, and then you can have like a whole desert town on paper for almost no money. If you watch the channel often, you've seen this bridge. This bridge makes it to every battle report I make, and it's made out of paper. It's kind of getting chewed up in here, but I made this out of paper when my children were like babies, like 2010, 2011-ish, and it's held up, and it's made out of paper, and it's a great piece of terrain. And again, papercraft is the way to go if you're on a budget, which I am. Also on the budget, aquarium plants. If you want to buy a big jungle of aquarium plants, you could do that. You can go to the pet store and spend $50 and buy a whole shopping cart full of plants, right? But that's not what I did. Every time I would go buy dog food or buy lizard food, or we had a lot of pets at one point, I would pick up 1 or 2 plants because they're like $1 each. These were 50 cents each. And, these are like, 2 for like $1, and this is like $1.50. And then these little ones here, there's a pack of 6 for like $2. And it doesn't have to be expensive to get just a ton of stuff for your hobby table. This is a separate bin. We have our worlds. We have our green table for Forest and Hills. We have our ice theme, and we have our ruin theme. And then I like to match these more colorful plants with this orange board, and it makes it very Martian. And again, they cost $1 or $2 for a pack, and every time you go to the pet store, you buy 1 or 2 packs. And then at the bottom of this, we have the blue rocks, and it makes for a very alien world. I really like the way that looks. I'd like to point out that the blue rocks are like aquarium gravel. We're down here, our regular rocks are much chunkier. You buy the rocks to blend the table together, and we'll talk about that at the end when I do it. But if I was going to do this again, I like the smaller, more gravelly rocks here. They're much more manageable. Where with the larger rocks, we tend to roll our dice into them, and they get caught a lot. And just buyer beware, when it's time to buy rocks, go with the smaller ones. Over here, I have more aquarium stuff. This thing here is from HeroScape, but like this wall is for aquariums that rock. These are bookends that I've had just forever. They're a couple of owl bookends. And this is aquarium stuff. These buildings here are made of paper. Squidward's house for no good reason. I can't remember the name of the company that made this. I swear to God, it was Battlefield in the Box. But I paid way too much money for this elf terrain, but I love it. This is the first piece of terrain I ever made. Let's look at this. I was walking down the road one day and I found this piece of metal on the ground, and it was all bent up, and I straightened it out, and then I glued it to a base, and then I based the base, and it's the first piece of terrain I ever built. And it's not large, but it does the job. Over here, this stuff comes from GameMat.eu, and this is pre-painted terrain. Not this piece. This comes from Reaper, and I painted that myself, but all this is GameMat.eu. And then it's got a bunch of pipes that come with it too. And it costs well over $100. It was like $150 for everything. And that sucked. But also, getting pre-painted terrain is its own beautiful thing. And that was really cool to have the money to buy pre-painted terrain. I don't recommend it often. But if you got the cash, you should probably save it. It's more responsible. So I have craters, but I don't tend to put craters down as part of the terrain because house rules. When a vehicle blows up, we put a crater down in its place and then fill the rocks in around it and have a living table that way. So although I have the craters, I don't put them down on the table much. These are my webway gates that I made myself. I modeled them after Dawn of War. And I'm often kind of embarrassed by them. I don't put them down much either, unless I'm doing a whole Eldar theme. Now, the secret to the Eldar theme is over here in this part of the house, because this is where Honey keeps a lot of her stuff, right? And Honey likes fancy rocks. And you can take these shiny rocks and these shiny crystals and like this purple one. And when we're going hard Eldar, I like to get this stuff in on the table, and it blends right into the table, and nobody, really notices it or cares about it being there. But it really has a great effect, and it doesn't play into the game. Like, you can take cover behind it if it's there, but it's a nice touch. Also, if I'm going with an Eldar theme, I have these Eldar ruins that the Farseer painted, and they look good. And then this guy here, this dude here was like a green army man, but he was huge. And I had him since I was a child as well. Like, he's super old. And I got into the hobby and I decided that he was a statue. So I glued him to the base is a piece of a Bob the Builder toy. Based him, painted him, and he represents the Imperium for the Emperor. The roads are neoprene, and so is the river. And they come from this company called Stratagem. And they were like $40 per pack. But the roads are an opportunity for house rules. So are the rivers in our world. Roads give you an extra inch of movement. The river slows your room movement, but gives you cover, and you might get eaten by fish. This was a cash investment, about $40 per pack. Really adds to the game, though. I really do recommend these products. And then that company is called Stratagem. And they give you these fun little bags to carry your stuff in, and it's not so expensive for what you get. And then my runes are mostly MDF, and I really like MDF. I have Reaper. This is Old School Games Workshop. This is New Games Workshop. This doesn't hit the table much because I got to do something with the wires, but it works. You can turn it on, and the carousel spins, and it plays music, but I don't use it very much. I'm really proud of my ruins. But ruins are like I love that I can fill an 8x4 with a ruined city and make it look cool. I dig that a lot. But ruins are kind of boring, particularly when we have hills. I haven't talked about the hills yet. So here on Star Crunch, we have the hills, and we also have the cliffs. Hill, cliff. Here's the difference. These are cut out of 1/2-inch foam. These are cut out of 1-inch foam. So when we're playing, you can go ahead and run up a hill, no restriction to your movement. But if you're running up a cliff or down a cliff, you give up an inch for every step. And what happened here is I was working on the farm, and I worked with the guys who own the place are not the smartest dudes, and they needed a tiny little bit of pink foam, and they bought a ton of it. And so I just got to take the rest home. And then I cut it down into squares, and I painted it, and I flocked it, and let's look at these in a second too. So after I got all this done, I cut these specifically, and one of the things I had in mind was the big mountain. And there's of course more of this, but the big mountain was on my mind originally, and when I first saw it in my mind, it looked like this. But then after playing on it for a while, I realized that you could make it a lot of different ways. I have 4 of these small circle pieces that can create steps, so you can really make it pretty darn tall if you want to. But I don't want it so tall for now because, again, we have our very large game coming up. And so I have specific intention today where most of the time I don't give the game any thought. What I'm trying to build is a beautiful world, a place that you don't know there's going to be a war there. You're just taking all the terrain you got and you're trying to make something look cool. And I don't care if your land raider doesn't fit. And I don't care if there's not enough room to deep strike on the table. I don't care. What I want is a cool looking table. And like Warhammer is really like catering to like the competitive crowd nowadays. That's not my Warhammer. I don't care about fair and balanced. I don't at all. I'm trying to tell a story here. And sometimes the odds are against you. Sometimes the terrain does not work in your favor. Sometimes your opponent has the advantage. Don't cry about it. Deal with it. And so when I'm putting the table down, I don't ever give much notice to how the game is going to be played. And however, this comes with a caveat though. If you're going to the game club to play with strangers, you can't do that. I'm playing with the Farseer, and he and I have, you know what goes on here, man. He and I get stoned and have a real nice time, and it's very casual. And if we have a disagreement about rules, we'll roll a dice and let the dice gods decide what should happen. And if you're not playing with people you can be cool with like that, maybe you don't want to build a table like I do, because my tables get a little bit wild. But anyway, this is how high I want to go up with this, because what I really want to do is put the bunker on the table. Now the bunker is as tough as a Land Raider. We roll it toughness 12, 2 up armor save, 16 wounds. But you might not be able to get inside. Whenever somebody tries to get inside the bunker, we'll roll the dice and see if the door opens. If the door don't open, you ain't going in. But that can happen in the deployment phase too. Like if you have infiltrators, you can find out then. And then maybe your Vindicator Assassin starts out in the bunker. You don't know. But I want the bunker on the table, and I want this hill accessible. So this is as big as we're going. But also, we're not going midfield. We're going back there. We face the windows up to shoot. This will be a strategic advantage for whoever gets into it. If the door opens, you don't get to know. We'll put our scout up there too. So this is where I'm at now. I used all the hills. I used all the cliffs. I've made a lot of space, a lot of pockets to hide in. Leaving the bunker here. Put the tower over there. I often don't like to put the tower and the bunker on the same table because it's, you know, that mix of Imperial and Eldar, but I might have to leave it. But now it's time to put the gubbins on, and there's tons of stuff to do now. So this box here comes from, I think the company's called Tinker Turf. The whole setup cost me less than $100. What I really liked about it is I had the whole thing built in less than an hour. It got built out of PVA glue. It was really easy to work with. And you can make a whole wall section. You can cross the whole table with a wall. It makes a bunker. It makes, you know, if you watch the channel, you've seen it. So this is always something like I could put a whole fence line around the Imperial side. But instead of the big heavy wall sections, I could just use the fences. But I also don't want to do this because this is going to be for a huge game. So, you know, I don't want it to be so ridiculous, but when I start thinking that way, I kill the creative part of my soul. So let's not think that way. See, I was looking at the Jest Hills, but the Jest Hills was making me sleepy. So I had to add the fast road. But now we got to sort those hills out again. And now it looks like this. The Elf Tower wasn't working for me aesthetically, so I got rid of it. And we put the ruined cathedral up. And now it looks all Imperial, the way it should be, to heck with the Eldar. But we got to keep going because it's still bare bones. So hobby trees are awesome. But there's no, you know, they're not, some of them can be cheap. When you get the Christmas trees, like these trees up here, we call these toilet brush trees. Those are relatively inexpensive because you get them at the holidays at like Michael's for cheap. Now notice these originally were Christmas trees that had the snow all over them, and I didn't need the snow, so I spray painted them green. So they were inexpensive, but the rest of them, like these and these come from the hobby store. Here in my hometown of Grand Rapids, Michigan, it's Ryder's Hobby Shop, the best store in the world. But you can also find them at like Michael's, and never at Hobby Lobby though. We never shop at Hobby Lobby. But hobby trees are super cool, but there's no really like cheap way to do it. If you're gonna buy like a variety of cheap trees, the Christmas trees are cheap, but the hobby store trees are not. So just like the aquarium stuff, don't buy it all at once. Just every once in a while, buy a pack of trees. And when I say they're expensive, I mean like, you know, $20 for a pack of trees. My special lady got me the giant birch trees. They were pricey. I don't remember how much they were, though. I have to get them down, though. This one here, well, these two are super old. They predate Warhammer. Like, before I played Warhammer, I was playing games with these trees that were built by a crazy person. But anyway, this one has seen some action. It's kind of flat now. So I always put it on, like, the table edge, so you won't notice how flat it is. So now we have some forests down. Places for scared elves to hide from mighty space marines. Places to get your cover save. At the very end of the process, I will throw the rocks down, and they will be thrown down heavy in the forest areas and then swept up to signify where those patches of forest are. But I'm not done yet. The road is bare. That hill is bare. Let's see what else we can do. So then I got the aquarium stuff out and added this nice little wall of foliage on the wall that'll give some cover. This is a piece I made myself out of different scraps. And then I took some of those aquarium plants and just added pops of color around the table. I know without the rocks around them, you can see the ugly bases that I will someday paint over, but not today. So we're doing all right. It's getting there. It looks like one of my tables. That hill is too bare. And I got to sit and chew on it for a second. I always want to add the DHL van, but I can never work it in. All right, I think I can live with this. Here's what we've done. I put this aquarium ruined tower. This makes it to almost every table I make too, because it always fits, it always works. And it's just a ruin on the hill. And then I added some barrels and some boxes. And I think we're going with this. I think we're calling this the table. And now it's time to add the rocks to tie all the terrain together. Like right now it looks like a table you're going to play a game on, but you don't want it to look like it's individual pieces. You want it to look like one thing. So here's our bin of rocks. Here's our cup. And we just want to cover up all the lines, all the borders, all the places where everything's just sitting cleanly against the table. But also, I want to fill the forest. I want to fill the forest so we know that if people are standing in the forest, they're in the rocks or in the forest. So I'm going to do the whole table, and it's going to be messy, but then we're going to straighten it all out. Now, the first steps of the rocks is done, and it looks a little harsh, but this is the next step where we clean it all up. So I take this tool here and just start pushing stuff around. And what I'm trying to do is make clear borders so we can see where the hills are, where the road is. And I've used this piece of plastic every time I've ever done this. And this is just part of the process. So then when it's all cleaned up, it looks like this. Lots of rocks where the trees are, so you can tell if you're in the forest or not. Now we got one more step to make. This stuff here, you can find at your local hobby store. It's relatively inexpensive. It lasts forever. However, I think it's photo-degradable because I tend to leave a table up for too long. I should take them down as I go because I do change the table over almost every week. At least I would like to. In my world, terrain makes the game. Like, I know some people play on the same table setup every time they play Warhammer, and that would drive me crazy. I would get sick of the game so fast. But we play in different worlds all the time. And so ideally, I would change the table over every week, although I don't always have the chance. But if you leave your lichen just sitting on the table with the curtains open and the big bay windows, it gets a little stiff and crunchy, where when you first buy it, it's very spongy. If you leave it in the sun, it starts to stiffen up. And so don't do that. But anyway, what I do with this is I'm going to scatter this everywhere where I don't like the table. Like this spot right here is just too bare. Let's put some plants there. There we go. So this will be the table for the week. Terrain is kind of my jam. I really like big terrain projects. I like having a lot of variety in terrain. I don't have a lot of free time right now. I don't have anything resembling like vacation time coming up. But someday, if I have free time, there's more of this coming. I just need the time for projects. I am going to build a Zone Mortalis board. I have that. I know exactly what I want to do. I know exactly how it's going to be. I just don't have the time for it. And then I want to make the world of Sis from Turnip 28. And I'm sure I don't have my Turnip 28 army, so it'll probably just be like Nurgle's garden. But I want to make the board that's mud and gourds and gardens, and that just sounds like fun. And then my true dream, what I want to do more than anything, is I want to build a living city, not a bunch of ruins, but like a living city that looks like people live there, and there's You know, there's whole buildings and cars and dumpsters and, you know, tourists. I don't know. Have you seen Brutal Cities? It's an MDF terrain line. That it's magnificent. The dude that makes that stuff knows exactly what I want, and I have no money, and I'm not going to buy any of that. But Brutal Cities is the stuff. But that's what's coming. I am going to build a Zone Mortalis board, a big muddy yuck board, and a living city. But that's someday when I have the time. In the meantime, we have the forest, we have the ice world, we have the Martian world, we have the ruins, and that's what we get to play on. And this week we're going to play a big giant game here. What's the name of this world? I don't know. What are we doing here? Fighting. But this is what we've done, and I hope you all enjoy it. Happy wargaming, everybody.